Hello, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday with 3W. Wellness Wednesday is sponsored by 3W Medical for Women, a nonprofit medical clinic offering free of charge or low-cost reproductive health services to women in the Seattle area, regardless of income or insurance status. 3W does not profit off of the reproductive health choices women make. The information shared in this podcast is the opinion of the speaker or speakers. Medical information is not intended as individual medical consultation, but for general education only. Always consult your own health professional for personalized advice regarding medical decisions. And if you're in the Seattle area, consider making an appointment to consult with us. I'm Helen Nguyen, CEO and co-founder of 3W Medical for Women and the host of today's podcast. Hi there, Wellness Wednesday listeners. This is Helen Nguyen, CEO of 3W Medical for Women. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. It's going to be a pretty fun topic. You're going to hear a lot of giggles. So pardon that. But the gist of this podcast, since we're in reproductive healthcare, we as a staff talk extensively about our reproductive systems and just personal stories. We share a lot. More than I think your typical workplace. Yeah. Don't you think, ladies?
Probably.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, so much.
Yeah.
If you're at a corporate
learning.
ladder, a little high rise in the city, if you heard our conversations, HR would be called. You'd be like, why are the staff talking about this?
Well, we're all about education. And so how can you not be educated if you don't talk about this stuff? So a fun topic that we like to talk about here is how we got the sex talk from our moms. And since we are such a diverse group of women with so many different age groups, ethnicities, and backgrounds, we thought, hey, let's put it on a podcast because it might resonate with some listener out there and make you laugh. There's a lot of gloomy stuff going on out there in the world, and so maybe this could be a little pick-me-up that you can resonate with. So I have two ladies with me. Lauren.
Hello.
She's been a regular on our podcast many, many times, so you'll hear her as a familiar voice, and as well as Theresa.
Hello.
And Theresa usually does more of our behind the scenes. She makes me sound really good and professional and make all of our podcasts sound really good. So give her a big, big clap, ladies and gentlemen, whoever's listening to this. But we're going to start with Theresa. We're going to put her in the hot seat a little bit since she's always in the background. But Theresa, how did you get the sex talk? And give us really good details, like what age and like which parent. I'm assuming it's your mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me give some of my background first so y'all know where I'm coming from and maybe some of you guys can relate. But I come from a Filipino family. My parents both were born and grew up in the Philippines up until like their early adulthood life, and then had me and we moved here to the United States. And so I've been very exposed to my Filipino parents' culture, and that has kind of bled into how my mom gave me the sex talk, or like lack thereof. But that just to give you a little bit of context for what I'm about to say. But I mean, throughout like my middle school years, going through puberty, I went through like the little class that you're supposed to take when you go to this random school with like two other middle schoolers, and you have your parents with you and you watch this like old VHS like puberty video, and it's like on this old TV, and then you go home and you don't talk about it. And anytime that I asked my mom when I was like a kid, like, Ma, how are babies made? She'd be like, don't say that. Don't say that. And
shut down the conversation.
Yeah. I was like, I just want to know. I was like, no, don't say that. Don't say that.
I like how she says don't ask. She just says don't say it. Like, just don't even speak it.
Don't say that.
Can you recall when, like, at what age you started being like, I wonder where babies come from?
I think I was watching a TV show, and like
Damn TV.
it was like it was a married couple, and so the husband was like, hey, let's have a baby, and I was like, how does that work?
Valid. Like,
Yeah.
It's a curiosity.
Where
that we
does
have.
this little human life just pop out of nowhere?
Yeah, like you can
know?
just think it and it comes to fruition.
Go to
Yeah.
the grocery store? What do you do?
The stork flies in.
The stork. Yeah. And so it was like, Mom, how are babies made? Don't say that. Don't say that. I was like, okay, I guess it's really bad.
I can't.
Must be terrible. Anyway, okay, so how I had the actual like formal sex talk happened the day before I left for college. And so I was 18 years old, prime time to have the sex talk.
Right.
But
Never heard about it before. Never went to school.
Yeah.
Never had sex ed. Just you were early. You knew exactly, or you didn't know what you were getting into at this point.
I had
of
no
course.
idea. Yeah, I was about to leave for college to be scarred. But yeah, this talk was like mixed with the I'm gonna miss you goodbye talk, and so it was like a combo, of goodbye talk plus the sex talk, and so it's really, really not awkward at all, of course. And then of course my dad was like, I'm just gonna go to bed. He didn't want to be a part of the conversation at all. And so after we were like crying and saying goodbye, my mom was like, it got silent. And then my mom, she like looked at me very intently and put her hand on my knee. And
I can picture it.
she was like, okay, so the word anak means child in Tagalog. And she's like, anak, do you know how girls get pregnant? and I was
We
like,
love Teresa's mom.
yes, she's funny. And I was like, yes. I was like laughing a little bit. She's like, okay, don't do that. Just don't say that. Don't do that. That's all I learned. And I was like, okay, thank you. And that was it.
There was no follow-up? Like, you didn't, like,
I don't know.
Mom, what do you think I'm going to do? Or, like...
I don't know. I didn't want to go there. I was uncomfortable.
That's so funny.
That is
That was
so
it. She's
good.
like, they do crazy things in college. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Quote, don't do
Don't
that.
do it and don't ask.
Effective sex education. Don't say that. Don't do that.
How has that worked for folks?
Right?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, gosh.
Anyway, she still didn't answer, how. Well, I guess that was the answer. She finally answered my question of how is a baby made.
And you already knew.
She was just waiting.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's how I got it.
Do you wish there was more of a robust, like, conversation? Or were you like, I don't want to have this conversation with my mom right now?
Probably not when I was 18.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah. I feel like if you've never talked about it too, it's more awkward
Yeah.
if you wait until you're 18.
Yeah.
Because she probably knows that you know, and obviously you know that she knows. And so then it's just this awkward kind of energy because you've never talked about it before. So I feel like, and I think
exactly.
it always is going to be a little awkward, but at 18, it can be like, I feel like more awkward than earlier.
No, exactly.
And I've never heard of a middle school experience where you go with two other people.
Really? That was like...
That was not my sex education.
My parents like got a thing in the mail. It's like, your child needs to participate in this.
And they were like, okay.
Yeah. And they're
That's
like,
funny.
We need to go to this thing where you learn about whatever. I don't know. And then we
Puberty.
Yeah.
That is so
It was
funny.
like kind of scary. Like trying.
Yeah, it's
it
like
was-
this looming, like, what am I going
It was like in this sketchy like school, and the room was like dark, and there were
Oh,
only two
gosh.
other kids in there.
There has to be a better way.
Oh, my
Yeah.
gosh.
Anyway,
Oh,
that's
boy.
my experience. I'm sure some of you can relate.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm sure. I'm
Totally.
sure.
Don't do that.
Totally.
Don't say that.
How about you, Lauren? How was your experience with your lovely mother, who we love?
Oh, yes. We love Tammy.
Love Tammy.
She's been on here before. Well, it's complete opposite of Teresa's. Like, if you could go the complete opposite, it's complete opposite. I came from a white family. We are white as white. Like, we don't have...
Norwegian.
Yeah, we're Norwegian. We are American culture.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, like... ethnic background in our family from far long ago. So my mom was very open about sex my entire life, very open about how she has a healthy sex life. She won't kill me for saying that. Like, just sex was talked about. Not in an inappropriate way, but just it was
age-appropriate times, right?
And it was always just very, like, this is the discussion we have. We'd have small conversations throughout, you know, my childhood, and it was just talked about. Private parts were talked about, how, you know, what's safe touch, what's not safe touch. Something I was thinking about as I was prepping for this podcast, that it's not about the sex talk, but just about, like, teaching children about safety and their private parts is she told me when I was a really young, by like 2 years old, where I could like help like bathe myself and understood, she would have me clean, like with the washcloth, my private areas because she was like, no adult should touch you there. Because if mom is cleaning you, obviously like that's safe, but there's other adults in your life that you could think are safe. And so she always like, the private parts, you clean your private parts. And I think that was a really like forward thinking about just like safety and having the child understand there's you know, boundaries and like sexual areas without it being like explicit being like this is sexual, you know? So I think that was a really cool thing, but obviously not about the sex talk. And I was 12 and I was sitting watching, I want to say like, and this just shows my age and my innocence, I want to say it was PBS, like Arthur. It might have been like a Hannah Montana. It could have been that, still young. And it was like a Saturday evening. I'm sitting on the couch watching my show. And my mother comes and sits on the edge of the couch. And I'm like, excuse me, woman, like I'm watching my show. What? She's like, well, I've printed out some documents I would love to go over. And I want you to read them and then we're going to talk about it. And I was like, what are these documents? I don't want to talk about this. And she was like, well, I have like, it was like 15 pages. I'm just like information about like your body, about what happens with sex, like not like explicit, but you know, just like health class vibes, I would say, where it's talked about, but not like inappropriate. And just really wanted to have the discussion. She just was so eager to talk about this. And at 12, I think I could have had the discussion. It was a little forward. It was a little almost like too much of like all this information at once. And she was like, I want you to read this and then we're going to talk about it later. And so I stood up. I took the pieces of paper and threw them in the trash. And then we talked about it later. She's like, so did you read the articles I printed out for you? And I was like, no, I didn't. And she's like, okay, well, we're still going to talk about it. And then we talked, and I probably didn't say a word, but we talked about it. And nothing stands out to me that was like too crazy, but I know we had these conversations. She also was very forward. Like I have family history of drug abuse. So there was always like, you have addiction in your family. You can't get addicted to drugs. Okay, mom. You have teen pregnancies in your family. You cannot repeat the cycle. You can't have sex. Like, it was just like, we talked about these things. We talked about our family history of things. We talked about just like where we came from in the negatives and the positives. And I think that was it kept the conversation very open because then I could ask questions when I felt comfortable. But yes, and then she was just always like, you need to have sex with someone you love. And it's not just for anyone. And I was like, okay, mom, thanks. Good to know, you know? So it was just always talked about and just very like in a healthy way, I think, but at some points uncomfortable. But I think if you talk about it enough, it gets a little less uncomfortable. It's always going to be a little uncomfortable with your parents. Yeah. Even now, it's like, I don't want to talk about that. And I'm 25, you know? So.
Yeah.
How was the sex education like in your school? Did your mom's prep at home help with it, or did you learn more explicit stuff in school?
Yeah, I feel like it made it less like crazy to talk about it because it was like, okay, I kind of know what I'm getting into. But we started as early as 5th grade, Flash.
Yes.
And I cannot believe that was like the curriculum we used. And I could not believe, thinking back, we had to get 5th grade, 11, right? Paired up with a boy, like an opposite gender. And we had to label the penis and the vaginal, vulva reproductive health together.
Whoa.
Yeah, we had learned what it is, and then we got the paper and we're writing, and he's like, and so we had to do it together, as a partner, but with this opposite sex. It was very uncomfortable. And I was like, and you'd think like, I heard other schools like in 5th grade, they keep boys and girls separate. Oh no, our school just went full in, and we started in 5th grade, and I had sex ed up until 9th every year. 6th, 7th, 8th. Wow. I saw a baby give birth at school. Head coming out of the vagina and everything.
What?
Yeah, I mean, a video of it, but
it wasn't a play, Theresa.
But like, we were well educated in all the things, and it was a lot. I mean, I don't know how I really feel about it, like personally, but like we got a lot of education about it, and so I feel like I made me less like uncomfy with it because I'm like, well, I've kind of learned this from Tammy.
Yeah.
So
from Tammy.
Oh,
yeah.
Very interesting perspective,
what about
ladies.
you, Helen?
Yeah.
Did you get any conversation?
No.
Oh.
Like my mother never did an explicit like sit down talk. It was very similar to Theresa's. Maybe more so in the sense of like my mother was growing up was very, very strict, very strict, and the minute I got my period, she put a giant calendar up in the bathroom and made me like mark it so that she knows when I was having my period.
Whoa.
Just so that she knows it was like happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do remember her saying at one point, like, don't sit on a boy's lap. That's how you get pregnant.
Wait, that's like that video. What are the chances of you getting pregnant?
I know. And it was like always like, really? Like if I was wearing really thick pants, like that could happen? Like that's how powerful it is, like, and that's I never asked. And my parents never, my dad would just die if he had to talk about it. My dad would just die. My mom was just always just like, just don't get pregnant. Just don't do that.
Do it.
Yeah. Don't do it. Don't get pregnant. Why is your period late? When it was late. And I was like, I was stressed. And she's like,
oh gosh,
she's probably thinking she must be sitting on all these guys' laps.
Oh god,
are you sitting on people's laps?
I know.
Is that why your period's late?
I know.
To be clear to the listeners, that's not how you get pregnant.
No, that's not how you get pregnant. No, but just very, very old school. In the sense of like, we just won't talk about it, but. The real exposure was very similar to Lauren in the sense of 5th grade.
School.
Yeah, public school. We did Flash. I did Flash, and it was very uncomfortable for me because I was just like, what? Yeah. Why? What's
going on?
Yeah, why? Yeah. What's going on? And
you only grew up with sister.
Yeah, I only grew up with a lot of women.
Also, like I obviously like my brother and I would like take a bath together. And like, so I'm like, I know what a boy looks like. Like, when you saw the male genitalia, you were probably like, what the heck?
Yeah, I was like, this is unnatural. Why is it on the outside?
Why does it look like
why does it look like it's looking at me?
Yeah.
Just all of that stuff. So Flash was very like disruptive, I think, for my brain at that moment. And we didn't get paired up. I didn't get paired up with another boy, but in class, we sat boy, girl, boy, girl.
Right.
So I remember this guy, Tommy, and I were really good friends. We sat next to each other. And we came back from a Flash session and we just looked at each other. We couldn't even look at each other in the eyes. Yeah. It was so...
It was like, we just learned things we did not want to learn.
Yeah, it was so... Because I don't think we both saw each other as like very different in like girl-boy kind of sense.
Right.
And we come back from a Flash video, from a Flash session, and we were just like, should we be this close? Like sitting this close?
Yeah.
And he was like, nah, man, it's natural. I was like, right. It's natural.
Man.
We just try to be like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's natural.
You're just like, oh my gosh, if he touches me, am I going to get pregnant?
I know. Am I going to get pregnant? Or like, did he just drink out of the same water bottle? Like, what's going to happen?
Right.
But it did, like, coming back from Flash class definitely changed the dynamic, I think, in the classroom, in the sense of, like, we were then hyper aware, hyper aware of our differences. And for girls like me who did not get that, talk, it was I feel like a little bit of my innocence died.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Totally.
So, but I don't, and then very similar, Lauren, like every year after that, they just got more and more explicit in the way they were talking about sex in school.
Yeah.
And I remember in high school, there was a class one more class about it. I was like, I cannot
I know.
sit through.
It was literally like 5 years.
Yeah, I was
Mine
like,
was
I
5th,
can't.
6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Oh,
I was like,
wow,
how much more do I need to know about this? So I literally asked my parents to write a letter to excuse me. And I was like, I'm just not going to participate. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to be talking about like all this other stuff. And I was like, I feel
like they got into like the STDs when I was a freshman.
Yeah, same.
Like we went through like
of gonorrhea.
Yeah, like pictures of gonorrhea and like got more into that.
Middle school was when I was introduced to the condom and the banana.
Oh yeah, we never did
really?
we did the condom and banana in freshman year, but in middle school that's early.
Oh,
I don't think I ever got the condom.
Shout out to Madison Middle School in West Seattle. Thanks for making me do. I sat out of that.
Oh, you had to like practice how to put it on?
We were in bio class and everybody got a banana.
Biology?
Yeah, everybody got a banana and everybody got a condom. And I was just sitting there. I was like, I'm not doing this because I'm just not. This is just
like
inappropriate.
13, 14.
Yeah, and then it was really funny. There's this guy across the classroom. They barely handed us the condom and the banana. He goes, oh, done.
Oh my gosh.
Put it on?
Yeah, he put it on and it was like so fast. And my bio teacher was like, well, he knows what he's doing.
Oh my gosh.
So that everybody was just like cracking up. But looking back at it now, I was just like, oh gosh.
Wow, that's crazy.
What were we thinking, Yeah.
Wow.
But that was one of those classes that I was like, I'm not going to participate because I really don't need to know about this. But anyways. Yeah. So that was my exposure and experience.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, your guys' experience in school, because I feel like even when I went through those classes, I still didn't know what was like going on.
You just like kept your brain closed off to it.
Yeah, maybe my mom's words like, don't say that.
You're just like, this is all a lie. I don't know what I'm hearing right now, but it's not the truth. I just vaguely
remember like the diagram of a uterus and me being very confused. I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that is.
That's funny.
And then like I feel like I didn't actually understand like how things worked. Like, oh, you get pregnant by having sex. Even after those classes, I feel like so much of what I learned.
So funny.
I feel like so much of what I learned is just like hearing other people's experiences.
Yeah.
So like, oh, this person got pregnant because they had sex with so and so or whatever. And it was like. Yeah, but so I feel like that fed so much more into the taboo of like, oh, hush, hush, like this person got pregnant and stuff. Or like even the internet and stuff.
So from Lauren, that was really helpful that you shared that. I really like how your mom introduced like, oh, this is how we clean our private parts and only you can clean your private parts. Being a mother now, I totally get it. And that aspect of being safe. But for Theresa, do you think it would have been a lot more helpful if you knew more about, like if your mom didn't say like, don't even say that, but would it have been more helpful if she was like, these are your parts and I don't know. Do you think that's part of the Filipino culture at all? Is there space or room for that, you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that culture. Like talking to a lot of my other Filipino friends or even just like Asian friends, that's always been the trend of the sex talk is just like, shutting down the conversation. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to imagine like what my life would have been like or what my mindset would have been like if it was more like comprehensive and like more of an open discussion. I feel like I just would have been more comfortable with my body if like my mom taught me a little bit more about like, oh, this is your period and this is what's happening. This is what happens when you go through puberty and stuff. So I feel like when I was going through those changes, I felt like kind of like, oh, this is like weird or like I feel kind of ashamed a little bit. And so I feel like if there was more education behind like, oh, this is a natural process and this is what happens to every girl, then maybe I would have had a little bit more confidence in like my body and stuff.
And not felt like, what is going on?
Yeah,
with me?
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And for you, Lauren, I know that your first menstruation experience was very different than both me and Theresa too, right? Like it was such a rite of passage.
Oh my gosh, yeah. My mom was like, you got your period. Like just was like excited for me. And she's like, I use tampons. You can use pads if you want. I was like, okay. So I used a panty liner and I was like, this sucks. And I live on the lake and I wanted to go swimming. My mom was like, well, try a tampon out. Literally my first period.
Wow.
And I put that tampon in and I was like, I can do it all.
Wow.
And I really felt amazing. I was like, okay, this is annoying that I have to bleed now, but I can go swimming still and do my sports. And I did gymnastics and like, fortunately, you wear a leotard. Like pads are not conducive for a leotard.
Yeah.
So I really was just a tampon girly from the start. And my mom was just like talked about it with me and like she's like, I don't like pads at all. And I literally have like not used a pad ever in my life.
Did she teach you how to put the tampon in and stuff?
Yeah. And she was like, I can help you put it in if you want. But I was like, I think I can figure it out. And I did. Took me a few times, but I did. Mm-hmm. She was a very big also about me shaving my legs. She was like, you can't shave your legs. And if you want to shave your legs, we need to go to the store and get a razor because you can't share people's razors because they might have like diseases that they can give you. Oh. So because like my friends would shave their legs or my cousin would shave their legs. And like then my cousin accidentally left her razor at my house. And my mom found it in my bathroom and was like, did you shave your legs? And I was like, no, I didn't shave my legs. And she like literally made me show her my legs. And she's like, I'm like, do you want to shave your legs? I'm like, well, they are a little hairy. Like they have blonde hair, but like they were hairy. And I was in gymnastics. I wanted to like not have smooth legs. She's like, it's a lot of work once you start. But she went and we bought. So we were just like always talking about these things. Yeah. And she was very just like, I mean, she just always was like very open about her body. And I think that made it a little less weird.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, even like moments, I remember like I had like moments of insecurity at like age 12 where I like thought I was fat. Like I said that. Said that. I was looking in the mirror. I'm like, I'm fat. Or like, I don't look good. Like I said that out loud. And she was like, we don't say that about ourselves. And then she was like, not, and we had these conversations and like we just talked about these things very openly. It was not, I mean, obviously they were so uncomfortable and I would get like weird about things, but like there was always that like baseline of like trust there and openness that it wasn't this like taboo thing. And I think that is the biggest thing of like, it doesn't have to be like always not weird, but if there's some sort of, conversation at early ages as it's age appropriate, I think that can just foster such a sense of trust and like openness that doesn't always happen when it's like taboo, because then you're thinking, well, I feel these ways or I feel these things and I'm gross and why do I feel this way? When it's more open with your parents, I think it's not always going to be open like, oh, I'm just talking to my mom like about sex or periods and it's not weird. It's always going to be a little weird, but it at least is happening, and I think that's
at least you're not just shutting it down and actively being like, this is weird.
And I think a big thing my mom did was like she talked about herself too. Yeah. Wasn't always like hyper focused on my body and what I was doing and what I was changing. It was like, mom gets that. I have this. I get a period. I have hair growing places. Like that is like normal in puberty and you're going to see that too. And so it was not like, are you changing? What's going on with you? Because then it's easier to think about it when it's someone else than yourself. Yeah. And then when it happens to you, you're like, okay, this happened.
Yeah, it makes you feel less isolated. Like, oh, this is happening to only me.
For sure.
Like, no, this has happened to mom too and stuff. And I think the way that like our moms talk about their own body and what they go through really impacts the way we see our own bodies and stuff. And so like with your mom, having this sense of like, oh wow, you got your period. Like it's a sense of like empowerment. Yeah. Of, like,
no, totally.
Oh, this is a natural process. Like I'm growing up and stuff, rather than like making it seem like weird that you are going through this.
For sure.
Lauren, do you think you would have kind of a similar approach once you have your own kids?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I'm a fem teacher now, too. And so I have this whole other appreciation for just, like, explaining the why behind things. Because when I think you can explain the why of, like, the science and the biology of what's happening in your body.
It's actually really cool.
It's way less, like, it's not the symptoms. Like, the symptom of your period is bleeding. And that's like, oh, there's blood coming out of me. Okay, let's talk about, like, what actually is happening. Yeah. And it almost takes a less, like, pressure off you of, like, I caused this bleeding to happen. Like, no, it's just, this is what's happening in your body. And these hormones are happening. And it's, like, actually really healthy for you to get your period. That's a good sign of health that your body is, like, maturing and growing. And you have hormones that are in good places. And so I think, I think talking about sex and, like, in a really healthy and like mature way and just bodies and sexual health and in a conversation from really young age, I think is like super, super important. I have a friend's aunt and uncle who talk about sex in such a good way with their kids. And it's just like I want to say not 10 and 13, and they are not uncomfortable with sex. They were buying a gift for a wedding gift for my friend. And they were talking about marriage and sex and all these things. And she was telling me that later. And I was like, your kids brought it up themselves to talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, yeah, because we've just talked about it, and they know like healthy relationships have sex in them, and that's like mom and dad time, and that's what we do, and like it doesn't need to involve them, but that's what happens. And then they asked more questions. The kids asked more questions, and the parents like offered answers. And I think that's just so cool to have like that built trust, because at the end of the day, if you can control like what your child's getting and like the truth, and not
in an age-appropriate
way where sometimes they're not going to get age-appropriate. The world is crazy, and there's stuff on the internet. And so if you can show them healthy relationships, show them healthy body image, all those things, I think that's just like amazing. And I mean, I'm not a parent. I don't know how I'll be, and I'm sure it's harder once you're in it. But I think like the way I experienced it, and then now with me having more education about like what the female body does in the male body, I think that it'll just like foster more of an excitement for me to talk about it, because I love talking about it.
Theresa, how has working here and talking about reproductive health, have you learned more things?
Oh my God.
Have you shared it with your mom?
Oh no, I have not.
Yeah, what do your parents think about?
Yeah, what are you
following up on that? Like they know you work here, and we talk about like, and it's like about women's health and all the things. Like, do they have any thoughts about that?
I don't know. They don't really. I mean, I tell them like what I do and like, you know, the work that we do and stuff. I mean, I think they really are glad that I'm here and I'm doing this.
Yeah.
But they're not like asking
in the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Like, what do you guys actually do?
Yeah, exactly. So like the conversation of like women's health hasn't really progressed very much more between me and my parents. I feel like since working here, I would probably be more comfortable like bringing up those topics to them.
Yeah.
I guess working here, it's just like such an educational standpoint rather than like I don't know, the way that it was approached to me before.
Like a cultural taboo.
Yeah, exactly. That I think I would feel more comfortable if that topic were ever to come up. When I first started, I wasn't really expecting to like learn this much about reproductive health. And
surprise!
Yeah,
Me and Helen are chaotic, and we talk about it all the time.
I know. The amount of things that I've learned just from people's conversations is quite incredible. But yeah, I was just like, I'll just work here as like receptionist and, you know, edit the podcast, and like, nope, I'm in the nitty gritty of like what goes on and stuff. But now I found that I'm more open conversations with like my friends or my roommates about reproductive health and women's health.
And it's not like this like weird foreign topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends are like, oh wow, that's like really cool, the stuff that your clinic does, and like that you can have these conversations and stuff. And I think a lot of women are wanting that, but maybe we're not exposed to that way of talking about their health.
Yeah. So I think we forget that we have such a like cool culture of talking about these things, because a lot of places like it's not talked about. Like it's just, even Josh, my husband, came to the clinic and saw we have beautiful new art that we just got, the uterus art. Yeah. And he was like, whoa, there's a uterus. He's like, that's crazy. And I'm like, it's not, it's a uterus. Like I look at that, I mean, like that's every day for us, you know? And obviously he like thinks it was cool, but he was just so shocked. And I was like, that shocks you? Like, I just feel like things don't really shock us anymore. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Really
but like, me and Helen will go into places and talk to donors and things. And sometimes people will be like, okay, they're talking about that. And it's just funny because me and Helen are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, you'll just say vagina and then people like,
like they get, and I think like, I don't know. I think it's cool that we can have these conversations and it be, you know, work appropriate, but still we're talking about these things. I think it's really, really cool. And the podcast also, I mean, I'm sure that kind of exposed you to things. Editing it, you were like, oh, gosh, they're talking about that.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm going to expose myself here. I never tried using a tampon until 24.
And it was because I told her to do it.
Yeah. I literally walked into work and I was like, okay, guys, I'm going to try to use a tampon. How does it work?
And I literally, to my three coworkers, won't name names, went to the back, grabbed a tampon, and showed them how it works with my hand.
With her hand.
And like I put it in water, I showed it expanded. Like I literally did a tampon introduction for my 20-something coworkers. It was very cute, but it was so funny. I was dying.
Oh yeah. I didn't use a tampon until I was married.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was always taught, like, things don't go up there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I just never used it. And it was very much like Lauren. It changed my life.
Oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. It
Yeah.
will change your life
It
too,
changed.
Theresa.
I
changed my life.
I still need some time. It was nice when I was swimming, but as like an all the time thing,
No.
it's like I don't
You'll
know.
get there, girl.
Yeah, you'll
Okay.
get there. Yeah, I remember my first time putting it in. I like sat down very softly.
Yeah, you're
And,
like,
I was
can
like,
I
what if
move in
it-
this?
Yeah, well, I was thinking, like, what if I sneezed and it just shot out of me, or like coughed? Because I swam when I was in high school,
Mhm.
What
and
did you do?
I just sat out. I just sat out for
Oh.
the. Yeah, I just didn't. I know, but because I was always told you don't put anything up there, so
Mhm.
I just sat out whenever we had a tournament or something. I just didn't swim. But I remember there was a girl that did the backflip on the on the on the blackboard, and her tampon came out, and so it traumatized me
Yeah.
of like,
Oh.
if I do something very abrasive
Yeah,
or
yeah.
strong,
Yeah.
and it's just gonna shoot out of me like a torpedo, and then what's gonna happen?
I feel like there's a higher risk of it going higher in you than it going out. But that's
that
crazy.
sounds
That
scary.
girl must have had like water go up.
I know, and just like pushed it down like a
down.
flush or something, and it was just floating around in the pool, and it was
That's
just
mortifying.
It was horrifying for her. We all were like crying. I was like,
Aw.
I
there's
would want to drown.
I would,
I know,
I would have
I
a lot
know.
of secondhand embarrassment. Be like, oh, poor
I'd be like,
girl.
I
yeah,
can't look. I
it was
can't
just like
look.
floating in the pool, and we were just like, I was like, how are we gonna
She,
clean
like,
the pool?
grab it?
She didn't know, and then we looked back, and there was like this like trail of blood, and it was just
Aw.
floating.
Poor
And we were
girl.
like, whose tampon is that? And she was like, oh crap, guys, I think that was me. And then I was
this
like,
on a meet or at practice?
this was at a meet. This was at a competition. Yeah. And I was like, we just have to blow up the pool now. It's contaminated. Like,
the pool.
yeah, because I was like, what are we gonna do? Like, yeah.
Oh my god.
Anyways, it was a trip, and I'm so grateful for the space now that I can talk about it in a way that's like appropriate. And now being a mom, it's very interesting because I think I'm gonna be that mom. It's a running joke now that I'm gonna be that mom where I take we have like a tablet that we have all these STD information on it and pictures on it. I'm just gonna bring that home, you know,
Be
when
like,
Max.
hey Max, we're gonna watch a little show.
Yeah, we're
tonight."
gonna be like, this is chlamydia. What type of questions do you have? You know, I'll be that. Invite your friends over.
Yeah, he's
Invite your
gonna, but
friends.
he's gonna be so
well informed.
well informed and just like around a bunch of women and a
Well-rounded.
women's health, and like
Yeah.
I just feel like he's gonna be like, what are you guys talking about? Like he'll be in health class potentially and be like, this whole thing, I knew this for years.
I knew this when I was 7 years old.
Yeah. Which I think is cool.
Well, and I think like just I'm the oldest of 13 cousins, and I have a lot of female cousins, and just I'm able to bring my little cousin Emma in, and I just love it that we get to talk about it very openly with her, and I feel like she's so much more well-rounded to just approach these types of topics.
Oh, for sure.
She's-
And she's so, since when she started coming, obviously she's gotten older.
Yeah.
Since she started coming a few years ago, she's less uncomfortable now.
Yes,
like
she
we'll talk about
is.
things, and she used to be like very squirmish, and now
Yeah.
she's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
That's just what cousin Helen and her coworkers talk about.
Yeah.
And she's in high school now, and they went through sex ed again. I was quizzing her in some ways, like, did they talk about how many eggs and stuff like that? And she was just like, all they talked about was like safe sex. They didn't talk about the science.
Yeah.
They didn't talk about like how the reproductive system actually works. And that is something that, if listeners out there, if you're listening, you have children, if you have like kids that are asking you questions, like come and talk to Lauren because she does FEM. Come and talk to any of our providers, because I think that we're able to approach it from a very scientific, educational standpoint that doesn't push a certain agenda of like, if you're not ready to do this, it's totally fine. But this is how things work.
Yeah.
And getting that feedback from my cousin was so affirming that she learned so much about the scientific parts about reproductive health here at 3W, just volunteering.
Yeah.
Because in her classroom, all they talked about was sex without the consequences of it, or sex in the emotional and pleasurable parts of it. But then we all know that that's fleeting. That's not what you should emphasize on sometimes. And so just having her affirm that was really, really cool. So thank you, ladies, for joining me on this podcast. And our listeners, if you have any questions for us, if you need the sex talk from these ladies here, I know, from these ladies at 3W, give us a call, make an appointment. It's never too late. And then moms out there, if you would like to, bring your daughters by, if we can talk about it and approach about it from a way that you're feeling ill-equipped, please let us know, because we want to be that resource for you here in this community. So thanks so much for listening, and thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Theresa.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye. For more information about 3W, please visit our website at 3wmedical.org. That's the number 3, the letter W, medical.org. From there, you can learn more information about the services we provide, book an appointment, or make a donation if you'd like to support our mission. You can also call our office at 206-588-0311. That's 206-588-0311. If you like this episode, please share it with others and consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, stay healthy and be well.